Ahoy there, mateys! It is I, Tiki here.
And I, SandyClaws.
And I'm just an honest forecaster trying to make my way in the world.
Don't spill your beans, Tiki.
Oh, dear. Oh, God. All right, folks, this is a few days late. It's just like, I don't even know, Sandy. Like, I don't even know where this is going to show up in people's upload schedules. I'll post this to Twitter. Much like the movie itself, it's kind of lost to time. We meant to do this on Monday, but then, Sandy, we literally just got caught up in a time warp of like, oh, three hours have gone by and we haven't recorded. We've just been talking.
Yeah.
So that's our bad, folks. That's our bad. But Sandy, why do you have to go and spill your beans, man?
Well, I've got too many beans, and some of them just need to be spilled.
God. Oh boy. All right, so folks, here's the basic gist of what we're going to be doing here. First of all, let's talk a little bit about our thoughts on The Lighthouse. Of course, the main reason you are here, Sandy, is because of one Willem Dafoe. He is among your favorite actors of all time, and not just because he played the Green Goblin, but let's face it, that's kind of a big part of it.
Yeah.
In a sentimental way.
Yeah, that's what kickstarted the entire love for said actor. Yeah.
So, Sandy, as a Dafoe lover, how did you feel about The Lighthouse? Were you excited to see it, and did it meet your expectations?
I did not know what to think going into this, so I just went into this with an empty head, because I'd heard it was very very immersive and very psychological, and I was really excited to of course see Willem Dafoe and to see how the entire film would pan out, because it's all set on this island, this lighthouse, and it is very psychological, and it's all in black and white. It's all what aspect ratio is that? Do you know?
Oh, I wish I knew off the top of my head. But
I really should know.
Very claustrophobic aspect ratio.
It is. And I think, looking back on it, I think it would have been really interesting if they kept it in a normal aspect ratio and made it smaller as the film progressed.
Oh dear, that would have been that would have been even more exciting. But I don't know. I honestly, Sandy, the only argument I have against that is that I feel like from the very get-go, you kind of need to feel the claustrophobia.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Like, I feel like the aspect ratio is like a big part of like why this film works psychologically as well as it does. Because the aspect ratio kind of like, it's sort of like subconsciously gets us into a frame of mind of like, we're stuck here. You know what I mean? Like, something is off about this. This is too small.
Yeah, I agree. You're absolutely right. But other than that, right off the bat, I knew I was going to like this film for its visuals, because this film has some amazing visuals. I think if you're going to do a black and white movie, it has to look really, really good. The lighting has to be perfect. You have to have, the actors have to be wearing the appropriate amount of makeup, and this film just did it really, really well. Yeah, that's it.
All right. Yeah, this was one of my most anticipated films of the year, and Sandy, my God, I am doing so much better in terms of like anticipated films of the year this year, because Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was one of my most anticipated of the year.
Yeah,
cracked that one out of the park. Let's see, I was very much anticipating this, and this very much panned out. So I feel like I've got a good track record for anticipating some good stuff this year. And with The Lighthouse, I really love how atmospheric this is and how much of an experience it is. Anyone who knows me and knows my taste and stuff knows that I kind of have this weird thing where I love anything set on an island. I mean, let's see, a few examples off the top of my head are like Lost, Survivor. I feel dumb because I can't think of anything other than those two obvious ones.
Nim's Island.
What?
Nim's Island.
I believe that.
No,
I'm sorry, you're literally taking me aback because that's such a random movie from my like teenage years that I haven't thought about literally since I was a teenager. So yeah, Island.
But yes, Nims Island.
Well, no, I'm just like, yeah, you're right. That is a movie that exists that is set on an island.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I do not have. Anyways, there's something about the Tiki Room. The Tiki Room is another obvious example, of course, Hawaii and everything. Just that tropical aesthetic. Just the whole like, I don't know. I really, Ezra, like deep down, I am kind of an introvert by nature. Like, I'd always prefer to kind of just sit at home with a good book or a good Netflix binge rather than like interact with people I don't know and maybe may or may not be uncomfortable the whole night.
Yeah.
I don't like pushing out of my comfort zone. And for that reason, there's just something on a really deep, inherent psychological level for me where I love the island setting. I don't know, just it always kind of like, it gets to me. It feels really immersive every time I watch an island city. And this is like, to me, the ultimate island movie. I mean, it really is. It's just like, this is the Citizen Kane of island movies.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, so yeah, like we said, we're gonna break this down based on Oscar categories. So, of course, Ezra, we have to start with our boy. We have to start with Willem Dafoe.
Now, I love the first shot we get of these two guys. They're just staring into the camera. It's like you're getting a good.
It's almost like a Wes Anderson shot the way it's composed.
Yeah, they're just staring at the camera. You're getting a good look at what they look like. What they look like at the very beginning, what they look like at the end. It's like they're staring at you, like you're in there with them, and you're not gonna leave.
Exactly, it's a great way to put it. So Willem Dafoe, the more I watch the movie, the more I just kind of like, I can't get out of my head how much he sounds like Paul Frees.
Really? That never crossed my mind.
I just in terms of like Paul Frees, like I just have instilled in my mind like Paul Frees, like all his like random ancillary pirate characters from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh yeah.
And I just like, I don't know, like just the whole like just the pirate talk, like ye dog. Just the inflection, basically, like it very much kind of is that same sort of like, as as Pattinson does point out, that kind of cliche pirate talk, it's but I feel like he does it in a way where it's like, the fascinating thing about Dafoe's character is that you have no idea really what mental state this guy is in. It's like with Pattinson, it's a very clear, like, this is a very kind of humble guy who's kind of got a shady past and he wants to escape that shady past. With Dafoe, it's like, God knows. It's like, Dafoe could have like murdered every single one of his lighthouse keepers that have come before him. It's like, who knows with this guy? I think he's like
he kind of
unreliable narrator.
He almost like he goes in and out of I think the best example I can think of is Quint from Jaws, where at the beginning of the movie he's pretty tame, he's a man of the sea, and you can definitely tell. Compared to the end of the movie where Quint is just he's totally nuts, where he just wants to catch this damn shark and he's going to do anything to do it. And I feel like this character that Willem Dafoe plays kind of goes in and out of those two personalities, where one minute he's more or less normal, but he's still the old fisherman type guy. But then the next scene, he's just kind of it seems like he's lost a few of his marbles.
Of course, there's a few really key components here thematically at play.
Yeah.
I want to talk more about them when we get into original screenplay, but importantly, we have like the division of labor with Dafoe acting as just kind of like this really, really aggravating boss who is just, incredibly patronizing to you, literally just sits in bed farting all day while you do all this backbreaking labor. I mean, it really is just like Dafoe kind of just that to me is like kind of like the biggest, like everyone, this movie is kind of like a a Rorschach test of like you can look at it a million different ways. That's why I love it. But Ezra, to me, throughout 2 viewings of it, that division of labor theme is kind of like the biggest theme that I drew of it. So what do you think of Dafoe kind of in that sort of that boss role?
Well, see, what do I think of it? It makes you feel very uncomfortable. He makes you feel very uncomfortable because, again, he seems like he's not all there mentally. And then, like, when he just gets up in Robert Pattinson's face and just starts yelling at him, like, "Y'all scrub these floors and do yada yada yada," and so he just keeps going on and on and on. I think, oh, something's going to happen here. I'm not sure I can give you a clear answer. I'm sorry if I'm being vague, but he just makes you feel very uncomfortable, you know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, he does. It's just very oppressive.
Yeah, it is. And
But
it's
of
like
course,
it just adds to the claustrophobic nature because he knows he can't get away from this, and we know we can't get away from it.
and Dafoe knows that we can't get away from it.
Yeah.
I think one of the big things with Dafoe is the fact that, like, unquestionably, he is lying to Pattinson, is like been pulling his strings throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
We don't know how much time has passed, but I highly doubt in that moment where Dafoe tells him that 5 weeks has passed. I really don't think that's the case, Ezra. The more and more I think about it, honestly, the more and more I think about the movie, the more straightforward it becomes for me. I really think that pretty much everything that Dafoe tells Pattinson throughout the movie is a lie. Like the amount of time that they could be stranded out there, basically everything when it comes to how Pattinson might be rescued, like, I don't know. What do you get out of that?
I hadn't really thought about that before. I assumed it was only a short amount of time because then I feel that would make it even maybe a little more impactful. Like, he's only been out there for a few weeks, and yet he's just completely gone. Robert Pattinson's character, that's what I'm talking about. But I think you could be right. I think the island itself could be kind of like purgatory, where it's like there's no time doesn't exist. And once you step onto the island, it's like, because again, the seagulls are apparently all the souls of the sailors. So I guess that would make kind of sense, not necessarily realistically, but in some mythological way, So it's almost like Willem Dafoe's character is like the keeper of this purgatory type location that Robert Pattinson's not going to be able to escape.
That's really interesting that you read it that way, Ezra, because the way I read it is way more literal than how you're reading it.
Okay.
Because the thing is, I'm reading it is like the island has no supernatural power, and it's all psychological. It's all just Dafoe messing with this guy, plus the isolation, plus the crappy living conditions, all getting to him.
Yeah, I was just proposing something there, but I think that is it just goes to show how this movie is so vague that it really does leave everything up to your imagination. Mm-hmm. And by those means, it just gets in your head even more because you're constantly thinking about what things mean.
All right, anything else about Dafoe's performance in particular?
Boy, he just does a really spectacular job, and I just really commend him. I hope he gets some kind of recognition at the Oscars. I really do.
I mean, I really think out of everything that we're talking about, he's probably the most likely to get an Oscar nomination.
I think so, yeah. I mean, his accent's really great. Not his accent, just his speech mannerisms are really great. He really nails that type of man.
I feel like his performance is a lot more consistent than Pattinson. Like, as we've already talked about off air, Pattinson's accent kind of like goes in and out a bunch of times.
Yeah, it does. He sounds like a New Yorker sometimes, and he sounds like a lumberjack other times, and
sometimes he sounds like a straight up sailor, like Dafoe.
Yeah, or maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's Dafoe getting inside of his head. I don't know.
Well, I have theories about that. We'll talk about it. But
Okay.
Pattinson's performance is definitely more shrouded in mystery than Dafoe's is.
Yeah.
I feel like with Dafoe is kind of like you basically get what you see, which is just kind of like this manipulator who's just sort of abusing the situation that Pattinson's in, especially with the docking the wages and everything, basically being able to hold that power over Pattinson.
Yeah. And it makes you wonder, because it's these two guys on the island alone, and Robert Pattinson's character could very easily just kill this guy, and say it was natural causes and dispose of the body and get away with it, and leave. He could leave the island. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there because, again, it's something that I was thinking of a few different points during the movie.
Well, Pattinson, I don't think the point is to, I think he needs to, I don't think he wants to leave. I think he wants to get to the light. That becomes his ultimate goal.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Why it takes him so long to kill Dafoe, I don't really know. Then again, for all we know, Ezra, with all the information, I mean, it's so scattered with the timeline, and both the characters are so unreliable. It could have just been a couple days they were out there. I'm not even joking.
Who knows? Really, truly, who knows?
Well, I mean, obviously we know that they, I think the one thing we know in the timeline for sure is that they spent the initial 4 weeks that they were going to spend on the island, right?
Yeah.
And then everything after that, everything once they get stranded, that's where stuff really starts to become ambiguous. Right from that point, right when the ship doesn't show up and Pattinson throws the, throws the bowls of shit into the ocean and screams. That's the point where we just start to lose track of the time pretty rapidly.
Yeah.
All right.
That was great. That little bit was great.
I know you're a fan of it. Okay, let's get to I think these two things kind of go hand in hand. Original score, and then more importantly, sound design.
Yeah.
To me, the most impressive thing about this movie through and through is the sound design, honestly. I was blown away by the sound.
Really?
Yeah, were you not?
Well, I definitely was. I guess I was just trying to focus on too many other things. You saw this twice, right?
I did.
Yeah, I only saw it once, so I could only.
But even on first viewing, the sound just really got to me, especially the foghorn.
Yeah, I agree.
The way that foghorn is integrated into everything, the way it kind of blends into the score, I love that about it. I love how it kind of becomes the score, and it kind of kind of takes on sort of a natural quality to evolve into that.
Yeah.
But importantly, we also get the sounds of the seagulls and the waves crashing and the water dripping and the and the rain and the wind, my God. And just everything, every little detail really contributes to the atmosphere. And that's where I really think the sound, I will be very disappointed if this movie isn't up for some sort of sound nomination come award season.
Or like when he's walking through the mud and you can just hear all the mud underneath his feet,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Foley design in this film was excellent.
And then, like I said, the score, the one thing I can say about the score is I just think it's really ingenious, kind of like the way they use the foghorns to kind of blend into what the music in the movie is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even happen right away. I love how we get a full-on, 5 to 10 minutes of just that sort of repetition of the foghorn. Did that really start to get into your head? Because it did me.
Yeah, it did me too. I was wondering if I was going to be able to, if I was going to be hearing it the entire time. I didn't want to, but I thought that was going to happen.
Well, like I said, I think kind of like eventually the point of the film, especially after a rewatch, I think with the foghorn, is that initial like 5 to 10 minutes where it's just constantly there, it leaves an impression on you so deep that you almost kind of hear it when you're not hearing it.
Yeah.
And so it does come back throughout the course of the movie, but it's not constant. But what is constant is the fact that the score itself is very horn heavy. And so even when you're not hearing that exact foghorn sound effect, you're still hearing intense horns through the music.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something like really, really organic and kind of like, it's diegetic meeting the non-diegetic in a really natural way. And I don't know. I love that.
Yeah, you're right. Remember, looking back on it, the sound was really impactful. And you need stuff like good sound if we're gonna make the movie black and white, because a lot of people won't have the type of attention span for black and white films. So you need something else to grab their attention, try and distract people.
Yeah, and just think of the opening moments of the movie. Just like we get that intense shot of like the first shot is just that fog, and we hear the foghorn, and that foghorn right away. I'm sorry, I don't mean to go on about the foghorn, but it is kind of like one of my big takeaways of the movie. That foghorn just right away just kind of lures us in. It's an attention grabber.
It is. It really is.
All right. Okay, this one should go by quick. I don't feel as strongly about this one as I do some of the other categories, but I do think it deserves some discussion.
Okay.
Best production design.
So, right off the bat, I'm wondering if they actually found a lighthouse that they just kind of customized for their needs, or if they just built the entire thing, which I also wouldn't be surprised.
To me, I think the most impressive thing about the production design in this movie is simply how claustrophobic it really all feels, and the way that you're able to get into that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and like lump stuff like costumes and makeup into production design as well, just because I don't want to get into all those things individually, but seriously, costumes and makeup both, like, definitely, I feel like, deserve a strong case.
They do. The costumes are great, and you can even see in the thumbnail here, the costumes look really great. And the
costumes, you can just see the mold on them. You can see just how haggard and aged they are.
Yeah, and the facial hair really helps, too.
Right. I feel like the facial hair is just very, very representative of who these two guys are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think overall across the board, I wouldn't be upset if it wasn't nominated for production design, because there's some very cramped rooms. There's some pretty impactful moments where we get the lighthouse itself kind of like flooded out and stuff like that. I love the spiral staircase and the way that's filmed. But I don't know. There's not a lot of locations in this movie, so I wouldn't be too upset if that didn't get in. But I do think that makeup definitely, that would definitely be one if it did get in, I'd be rooting for it. And then definitely costumes as well, because the thing about costumes is that usually costumes goes to a movie. Like I would say the movie this year that's probably the front runner for costumes is like Little Women. And it's always the same type of movie. It's always that kind of like period piece, like poofy dress romance movie.
I honestly, I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has a pretty good chance for costume design.
I honestly would love to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Speaking of production design, forget about the Lighthouse. My God, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for production design for the win.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, anyways, let's get into this is kind of like one of the big meat and potatoes of the technical categories, which is editing and cinematography both. Editing in terms of how they piece together the timeline and how we're supposed to get into the space of the of Pattinson kind of going crazy, and we're kind of along on the ride with him, and how the timeline just very effectively doesn't add up. And then cinematography, I think, is one of the technical awards I would be upset if it didn't get nominated for, especially because I feel like there's so many shots in the movie that really take advantage of that, thin aspect ratio with the scale of the lighthouse and going up the spiral staircase and, panning up to the lighthouse itself and seeing Dafoe up there. And
Yeah.
I mean, just generally speaking, just all the shots, like this is just a movie that is filled with instantly iconic shots. Would you agree?
I would agree. I remember seeing the opening shot with the seagulls and think he was just absolutely beautiful.
The opening shot in this movie is just honestly one of my favorite opening moments of any movie in quite some time. I mean, it just instantly pulls you into the world.
Speaking of the seagulls, whenever you see them flying, does it ever strike you as kind of uncanny the way they fly?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Like they're almost like they're on rods or something, and they're just being like puppeteered.
I'm so glad you're mentioning this because, like, I've looked at a lot of explained videos about this movie, and you're the first person to even bring this up. But yeah, I do think they're intentionally fake looking, Ezra. I really do. I mean, they can't look that bad on purpose, or not on purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because it's like it's just very generic the way they fly, and it's like they're almost flying in one place at certain points in time. It's like
I mean, I feel like the flying in one place thing is definitely kind of a metaphor, at least the way I took it. But that's the thing with this film. This film has like a lot of metaphors, man. It's very deep in metaphor land. So yeah, I mean, and the aspect ratio itself, just the fact that they chose to shoot in that aspect ratio and just really commit to it and just come up with shots and compositions that really take advantage of that and, really just dial in on the claustrophobia. I mean, I do think, to me, this is some of the most impressive cinematography I've seen this decade, and for my money, I don't know. Oh, so, I definitely think that I would be sort of really bummed if this didn't get in for cinematography.
It'd be really relieving to see a movie like this that makes so much out of so little, get in such a big category.
Okay, one of the big ones we've already talked about. This should go by quick because we've talked about a lot of the big themes here, but original screenplay. So, of course, this was like literally they went through Lighthouse Keeper's journals and old sailor talk and myths and legends of the sea. I mean, the research for this was just absolutely absolutely astonishing to get the detail down on this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think that alone, just the way that they were able to get that into the movie and somehow make it flow, somehow make it to where, I mean, I will admit I've seen some period piece stuff where I think they go a little bit over the top with the period dialogue and it's a little bit too much. And with this, I think there is a breaking point. I think there are people who would see this and be like, I can't even understand what they're saying. I need subtitles. And I will admit, Ezra, I'm kind of excited to watch this movie with subtitles myself. I won't lie. But I do think the movie flows without subtitles very well. I do think that really you just kind of like get into the gist of the language. It's kind of like a rhythm to it.
I agree. Yeah, it's very intricate the way they talk and the writing. Wow. Like, who is the writer for this?
I believe Robert Eggers.
Oh. Really stellar job because just the language is just so intricate and so it's almost beautiful in a way, just kind of the way they especially Defoe's character, mostly Defoe's character, the way he talks and just the type of his mannerisms and the words he uses. It's sloppy, but at the same time it's beautiful, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure the screenplay, just the way the screenplay is constructed, like I said, I keep going back to this, but you know, how we lose track of time and how effectively it does that. You know, we have elements. One of my favorite moments in the movie is when Pattinson's trying to leave on the boat. Dafoe chases him with an axe, and then like 2 minutes later, Dafoe's like, "You were chasing me around with an axe, lad." And I love stuff like that. I love stuff like that. I mean, and I feel like there's moments like that throughout the movie. I feel like we need to just, like, it compels me to go back and rewatch it, because I feel like the whole movie, Dafoe is just playing this guy like a puppet. Speaking of Robert Eggers, Sandy, have you seen The Witch?
No.
It's on Netflix. I recommend you check it out. It's the first movie by this director. This is the director's second film.
Okay.
And it is very much kind of based on an old-timey, like, colonial folk tale. It's it kind of harkens back to like the witch trials and stuff like that.
Okay.
And it's very different. It's much like this film. It's very experimental. It's got a really, really rustic quality to it. The language, again, is very authentic, and it kind of plays on sort of like realistic psychological horror. I think this is a more compelling and propulsive movie from just an editing and conceptual point of view, but The Witch is a very good movie as well, so I'd recommend you check that out.
Okay.
Yeah, Robert Eggers is definitely a director that I am I mean, Sandy, we are in the golden age of horror cinema right now with people like Robert Eggers, and I mean, he's just kind of like the tip of the food chain with horror directors. I really think that the genre as a whole is just Jordan Peele, of course.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, you know, a popular one is James Wan.
Oh yeah.
Of course, Bong Joon-ho, who did Parasite this year. Just all these horror directors that really have Scott Derrickson, who did Doctor Strange. You know, all these guys are really just kind of establishing themselves and establishing their name. And one of the things I like about horror as an art form is that it's one of the few genres of movie left where modern kind of mainstream audiences are willing to take a chance on something different, you know?
Yeah, you're right. That is a really good point. It's a really good defense for horror movies. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Because I feel like that is I feel like horror movies honestly are kind of like, when it comes down to my list of 2019 films, like I'm going to do a top 100 2019 films list at the end of this year. That's going to be a very ambitious undertaking on my part. I'm really excited about it. But when it comes down to it, Ezra, I do think that the 2010s were kind of the decade of horror. I mean, I'm not saying my top 10 is going to be 10 horror movies point blank, but I'm saying, you know, like, I feel like these kind of movies sort of define the decade for me.
Not movies like Lighthouse.
Movies like The Lighthouse, movies like The Witch, movies like The Babadook.
Oh, okay.
You know, like all over the place. I don't know. I really think it's been a strong decade for horror.
It's kind of like art house pieces, not super publicized, but you mean
right
like that? Okay.
All right. So yeah, let's get into the big dog who just wants to make an honest living. Yeah, Pattinson. I mean, let's just break it down, man. Pattinson, I think, I honestly think the inconsistencies are very, very intentional. I think it fits with kind of like, you don't know this guy's backstory. This guy's kind of got a shady past, and it kind of gets revealed once he spills the beans.
Let's go over that, because what is his shady past? I must have missed it.
Okay, his shady past is that he was working on a lumberjack crew, and it was his responsibility to kind of like hold a rope that kept another guy from falling off a tree, and he accidentally let go of a rope, presumably because he was drunk.
Oh.
And that's why at the beginning of the movie he doesn't want alcohol.
Oh, I see.
And so he basically killed a guy because his hand slipped because he was drunk.
I see.
Yeah, that's his shady past. And you had to go and spill your beans, lad. All right, let's just break down the bean thing really quick, because I really do think it's going to go on to be the most memorable scene in the movie. I really do. So, of course, we get that big story that Pattinson tells, that big monologue. And we just get this really dramatic kind of like dream, like just Willem Dafoe wandering around, and you hear his voiceover just like, "Why'd you have to go and spill your beans?"
It's such a goofy line, but it works so well. It's so
Why'd you have to go and spill your beans? But then what I love about it, Ezra, kind of the cherry on top, is that when Dafoe confronts him about it later, he's very fatherly about the situation. He's just like, "But you had to go and spill your beans, lad." But yeah, anyways, so Pattinson, like I said, I do think because he's got this shady past, I very much think that his accent is intentionally sporadic.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think it's as consistent of a performance as Dafoe, but I think kind of just conceptually, like, also this is a guy that keeps to himself. It's kind of like a situation where, usually this will happen in a movie with only two characters, and I'm used to this because I like movies like, like Waiting for Godot and My Dinner with Andre and stuff like that. So usually you'll have generally the structure of these types of movies, Ezra, and I do feel like The Lighthouse does follow this same structure, is that the quiet one will learn to talk and the talkative one will learn to listen.
Okay.
And at the start of things, Pattinson very much is the quiet one. He's the one who's refusing the drinks, kind of very modestly, kind of refusing conversation. Sort of, he's just an honest man who wants to make an honest living in this world. But very slowly, and of course through alcohol is a big theme in this movie too, by the way. Just kind of like, I just love how by the end of it, they're so desperate that they're literally drinking the lighthouse oil or fluid or whatever. They're just doing anything they can, just like get some sort of escape. I mean, that's the thing. This movie, on top of everything else, it is a very good anti-drinking movie. Kind of shows you the pitfalls of alcoholism. Right. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, Pattinson, I don't think he's as likely as Dafoe to get nominated for an Oscar. But I do think that this movie is, like, I've always been a champion of Pattinson, man, ever since, maybe not since Twilight, but definitely since I started seeing him in more dramatic stuff. And he's kind of been on a little bit of a roll. He's had great roles in The Lost City of Z. Last year, he was in one of my favorite movies of the year, which was Good Times, and he was the lead in that. Or I believe it was just called Good Time. This year, of course, he was cast as Batman, and I honestly think that's a pretty damn good casting choice, all things considered. And, of course, he's got this as kind of like his main resume builder for this year. And I do feel like this movie is going to go a long way towards kind of like wiping the stink of Edward Cullen off of him. I mean, I've long since forgiven him for Edward Cullen because I know the nature of the industry. I would take Edward Cullen if I could get it. I mean, money, man, money talks. It's the huge franchise, Cha-ching, baby. I have no shame in that. But, I understand. But, I do feel like Pattinson is a guy who is really taking his craft seriously. And I do think he's going to win an Oscar in the next 10 years or so.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's definitely He's got some ability. He's got the stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right. So finally, Ezra, we're going to wrap this up into our final thoughts on the Lighthouse. We're going to go
Making good time too.
What?
Good time too.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Best Picture, Ezra. Best Picture. Why should this movie maybe not win Best Picture, but why should it be nominated for Best Picture, Ezra? Give it the pitch. Spill your beans, lad.
All of them?
Yes, all of them, Ezra.
Well, like I said before, this movie makes...
Damn. Now I realize that I should have gotten a bowl of jelly beans. And I could have spilled them. And I would have spilled the beans.
Like I said before, this movie, visually, it makes a lot, and I mean a lot out of very little. And that's intentional. They limit themselves because I think the director really wanted to push his challenge himself, you know. And it paid off as an audience member looking at this. It looks just absolutely gorgeous. The performances really shine. The production design really shines. The cinematography just absolutely just sparkles.
Sparkles like Edward Cullen's. I'm sorry.
Wrong type of sparkle. Yeah, that's really all I've got. Sorry, it's not as much as it could have been.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, I at the end of the day, I really think this movie kind of fires on all cylinders of what I'm looking for in a movie, which is like, you know, something to ponder afterwards, memorability, quotability, great performances, something unique, something that I haven't seen before, kind of something that gives me kind of like, you know, like a really good pace to it. And of course, awesome production design, cinematography, editing, music, sound design, all that good stuff. I mean, the movie just fires on all cylinders that way. It's my number 2 favorite movie of the year, and it is one of my favorite films of the decade. It really is. I can safely say that. Like we've been saying, it kind of feels like a Criterion movie. But my number 1 of the year, Ezra, and this is going to kind of like flow into like, I really want you to see this movie so we can discuss this movie, is Parasite, because Parasite might not be as flashy as this movie in terms of just like the sheer audacity of what this movie's trying to do from a conceptual level. But Parasite is a movie that, as the title will suggest, it will get under your skin, man. It's a movie, like, I will say it probably has one of the most riveting stories that I've seen in any movie that I've ever, just straight up ever. One of the best stories of any movie I've ever seen.
All right.
So you need to see Parasite, dude.
I will. I promise.
Yeah. See it before Motherless Brooklyn, for the love of God.
I probably won't see that, at least anytime
Poor
soon.
Edward Norton is just sitting here like in the midst of all these like real Oscar movies, and he's like, hey guys, I got my I'm sorry, I can't do a good Edward Norton, but Edward Norton's just like, I got my Oscar movie too here, man. I wrote and directed it myself. It's my passion project. Anyone?
You know,
Edward Norton is just like standing on a street corner with a sign that says "Will direct for Oscars."
Gee,
Poor Edward Norton.
I was genuinely excited for that movie, and I will see it because I still have hope that I'll like it. I think I will like it on some kind of level, but it's really saddening me hearing all these reviews, because as soon as I saw the first trailer, I really liked it, or liked where it was going.
Sometimes that's just the way it goes with really good trailers and not so good results.
Yeah, unfortunately.
All right.
It's not the case here, though.
Well, folks, thanks for watching. And if you like this content, click subscribe. Why, Ezra?
Because we're trying to make an honest living.
Oh, come on, sell it.
Because we're trying to make an honest living.
We're just two podcasters trying to make our way in the world.
Sorry, I couldn't yell. People are sleeping.
Oh, it's okay. Why do you have to spill your beans, Ezra?